As a comedian who moved from Australia to America, who grew up in, you're only a couple years older than me, so you grew up in the 80s and 90s where television between our two countries are vastly different. Now with the internet and everything, you can watch the same programs everywhere. When you moved here to America, did you have to try and familiarize yourself with American comedians and American comedy?
Yes and no. By that stage, I was very aware of things, and also by that stage, like the early 2000s, DVDs, you could buy anyone's special and stuff. But growing up, I often get asked what comedians influenced you, and the truth is, I can't give you an answer that you're gonna know who the comedians are, because all I saw on Australian TV was Australian comedians. Now, I saw Eddie Murphy's Delirious. That was a big deal because that was released on VHS, but we didn't get HBO specials. My first experience of George Carlin was he was Rufus from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Richard Pryor was an actor to me. We didn't get Saturday Night Live when I was a kid. So even when you saw something like Wayne's World, you didn't know that it came from a sketch. That didn't sort of register. And so I saw all those Bill Murray movies and Dan Aykroyd and all that type of stuff. I didn't know there was a show Saturday Night Live. And the comedians never came out to Australia to perform, and not that I would have ever been taken there as a kid. So I never had any exposure. So it was just Australian comedians and Eddie Murphy. But then after that, when I became a comedian and I started, it's a bit wanky to say study the craft or anything like that. But when I got more into it, obviously people said, oh, you got to watch this guy, you got to watch that guy. And that's when I started watching comedies, really after I became a comedian.
You have jokes about it, and I'm sure you've met plenty of celebrities in the world. How do you, has there anyone you ever ran into that you've been starstruck by? Because I've worked in radio, I worked in, comedy, TV. So my life, I've met tons of celebrities, and I just, in my brain, already told myself, don't get starstruck, just treat them like normal people. Was that, for you, when you started working in LA in the entertainment industry and running across people, was there anyone you ever came across that you just got starstruck, goofy, walked away, and it's just like, I can't believe I did that?
I still get starstruck by meeting celebrities. I've become friends with a couple. I'm friends with Russell Crowe. He's a great guy, and I was starstruck when I first met him. And now he's just me mate. So it changed. Brad Pitt came on and was the weatherman on my show, and he's just the nicest guy you could ever meet. But I got starstruck when I met him. I don't think it goes away. But then the flip side of the coin, I don't think I get, it's not like I can't talk in front of her or anything stupid like that, you know what I mean?
You're not crying like Michael Jackson fans.
Yeah, then I get the flip side of the coin. Sometimes I'll do a meet and greet, and people will come up to me and they'll start to stutter because they're starstruck, and I think, starstruck of me? Like, what the you know what I mean? So people have their things, I'm trying to think if there's anyone that it was like, Paul McCartney. I met Paul McCartney at the Improv, and I could hardly talk. But I still kept it together and sort of went, hey, thanks for, and he was like, you're really funny, man. You're really dirty. And I was like, and I just went, yeah, I am. That's all I could get out.
This may fall flat because of not knowing Saturday Night Live, but there's a Chris Farley bit where he meets Paul McCartney, and the whole thing is him.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I love that sketch. Yeah.
It's just, that was awesome. Okay.
That's the fun thing about me. I've got 40 seasons of Saturday Night Live to get through. Sometimes I literally just watch a season from 1992, and I'm like, oh, this is great.
Oh yeah, they're putting a lot of old old sketches too, on their YouTube. So sometimes you'll just get a sketch from 8 years ago or a sketch from 18 years ago that just come up on YouTube as new, and it's fun and great. By the way,
I watch them on Hulu. They're all sitting there.
Oh yeah, there's that too. That also reminds me, since you brought up Paul McCartney, I don't know if you ever heard this story, but he 2 or 3 years ago played with the remaining members of Nirvana, with Kurt Novoselic and David Grohl, and I think Pat Smear. And he gets interviewed afterwards, and he goes, yeah, this was a fun thing to do. These guys were great. And they go, hey, did you know they were in a band called Nirvana? He goes, no idea who they were. They seemed like they knew each other.
Yeah.
He's just so oblivious to everything. Your comedy's well known for being two things with most audiences, especially mainstream people that know you're tangentially through things, is that you're, and you brought it up, offensively crass, but you're also very insightful, especially when it comes to like progressive and social political viewpoints. Have you ever found that some of your audiences clash because some come to you for your viewpoints, some come to your crash?
I've alienated the left and the right, and I haven't meant to, but I have left-wing people who hate me and right-wing people who hate me, and I'm just like, I guess that makes me a moderate, I guess. You know,
By the way, that shows the comedian brain. You've made the left and right hate you. Not I've made the left and right love me. You've made them hate you. That's classic comedian brain.
Well, I hope I've made a lot of moderates. Like, look, I have left-wing opinions and I have right-wing opinions, and I don't even look at them like that. I just look at, this is what I think, you know, and I try to on stage just sort of give it, you know, and there's like I say, on the Jim Jefferies show, there's things I look back at and I go, yeah, maybe I should have left that alone, or maybe, you know, but the problem with that show was every week you had to talk about something, and the problem with being a political pundit or whatever it was, you know, if you asked me an opinion on something, I had to give it. I had to go, okay, well, if push comes to shove, that's my opinion. But with most people, my opinion on these things are things that maybe that was my opinion, but I didn't really give a on some of the topics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't give a about. There's certain things that I don't want to get into it now because then I'll have to answer that question. You know what I mean? but it's look, I just when I see certain comics, there's things that say Dave Chappelle has said that I don't agree with, but I still think he's a brilliant comic. And you know, from all reports, a really great guy. I don't know the guy, you know what I mean? But I don't have to agree with every single topic he has, and I agree with some of his right-wing topics. I agree with some of his, don't agree with some of other topics he has. I just think, surely you understand that we're all individuals, and you can enjoy a person on a level of, do they make me laugh or don't they? You know, but it turns out that's not the case for many people. Many people are all or nothing people. You know, so that person's bad, that person's good, that person, you know, so it's not like, I'm looking at all the comedians who they're trying to cancel at the moment, you know, different comics, and so, you know, my friend Jimmy Carr is in hot water at the moment because he said a joke on his special. I can only tell you this, Jimmy Carr is one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in my life. I won't say a bad word about the guy, you know what I mean? And then, like, the Joe Rogan thing, me and Joe get along fine. I don't want to speak on that matter. You know, it's not up to us to get in trouble for other people all the bloody time either.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, totally makes sense. Also, and I will say, Jimmy Carr's Netflix show, The Fix, I watched that I watched an episode of that every night before going to bed, and you know, it's a collection of good, funny, hilarious people, and just a good panel formatted show.
I can tell you this, you know, like Bob Saget dies and the whole world comes out and just has story after story after story about how Bob Saget has helped them, or when they were early on, and he helped me early on in my career, and he was so supportive. He was a guest star on my two TV shows. He was on the Jim Jefferies show and on Legit, and he didn't get paid jack for that. He got a couple $100 or whatever the union minimum was to be on the show, you know, and he just, if you need me, I'm there. He'd help you out. He'd give you everything, that bloke. He's just the nicest fellow in the world. And I don't know if the public knew how nice a person he was until he passed away. And I'll tell you this about Jimmy Carr: he's as nice as Bob Saget. It's the same thing. When Jimmy Carr dies, there won't be many people who say a bad word about the guy. He supports young comics. He helps you out if you're having a bit of trouble. He's always the first to reach out to you and make sure you're okay. If comics visit Britain from overseas, famous comics, he always takes them out to lunch and takes them to the best clubs and stuff like that so they feel welcomed. You know, I feel the left and the right are being a bunch of now.
Yeah, they just keep moving the line back and forth. You don't know where the line is.
I'm not excusing what people... One rule for all or one rule for none, you know? I don't know. This is a conversation, but me even saying this it will get me in trouble with some people. It will.
Yeah. Well, hopefully those most people don't listen to this podcast, so what do you really do? Going back to a little bit lighter of a subject, talking about your fans, have you ever met one where you're like, oh, I really wish you were not my fan. I really wish you weren't here watching me with such excitement.
Yeah, well, you get that, of course, because there's, like, let's say I have over the world 1 million fans of people who have bought tickets to see me or whatever, I've played to at least that amount of people who have bought tickets, and, they're not all going to... I have to assume that I've performed in front of a serial killer or two and a few pedophiles, and you know what I mean? It's a weird question to ask if all my fans are good people. Statistically, it's impossible.
It's just John Wayne Gacy in clown makeup and pantyhose, listening to Intolerable, just putting on lipstick, like, oh, I can't wait to eat somebody tonight.
Of course you're going to have a few. I bet you there's a few people that I'm fans of that they don't want me to voice that. There's the musicians and stuff that would say, oh, I'd rather you just kept your mouth shut about me, actually. Don't pipe in.
Okay, and you brought up your show, the Jim Jefferies show, which, by the way, before I even talk about that show, legit, I heard of you before legit, but I really didn't become a huge fan of you and, like, know you and digest your material until I saw legit. Second season on FXX. Was great. The show was amazing.
Yeah, the second season, I think, took a big leap forward. I'm very proud of that. I liked the first season. The second season, I'm super. I got more heavily involved in the production and the writing and the this and that. I was heavily involved in all of it, but it was more my vision of what I wanted the second season. And the third season, we were ready to go. I had the scripts ready to go. And people ask me, they go, oh, will that show ever come back? And the answer is now no, because Billy should be dead. We had a character from season 1 that was dying, and now it's 8 years later. So we can't really bring it back, But me, Dan, and DJ, the three main actors in the thing, we're all still incredibly close, the three of us. It was a very... happy set in that sense that the actors and the crew, we all got along. There was moments with people or whatever with any workplace, but for the most part, there was a lot of love on that set, and I missed that show deeply.
That's good to hear. Well, I will say
this, but people who give me and all that type of stuff, if you look back on those episodes, all 26 of them, I don't believe that there was ever, in any format on any TV show ever, disabled people were represented better than on that show.
1,000%
Disabled people weren't given sympathy. They were given laughs, and in a dignified way. And even if they were being teased, they were teasing each other or something like that. I don't believe there was anything in there that I'm ashamed of with how we dealt with the disabled community. And I think now, when you talk about we need more, what's the word, diversity, right? Mm-hmm. And you're talking about, even like, they talk about like, oh, we need different people's sexuality, different race, different that, different this, different that. The disabled community hasn't been spoken for in that conversation. We haven't said that they need to be, represented a lot better. Not once. So, I think that was something good we did.
And you know what? You beat me to the punch of the question which was going to be about how you have you featured respectfully a lot of disabled actors. So this is reminding me of the question to write for the answer that you just gave me. So great job being a good interviewee.
Well, I'll tell you what about disabled people. It was never a plan. It was something that happened organically. We had one disabled character who was a main character, and that was based from someone from my personal life. And then, he had to live in a home for an episode, and for him to live in a home, we had to populate the world, And then Nick Daly, who played Rodney in the special, Nick was a dream, all we had was one disabled character that lived in the same room as Billy in the home, you know what I mean? And we wanted him to be funny and all that sort of stuff. And we auditioned so many people, and it's such a tough thing to say, this person's going to be making jokes, sometimes sexual jokes or dirty jokes, stuff like that. And most people, they had to come in with their parents, and help or carers, And I thought, what are we doing? Then Nick Daly walks through the room. Man, that guy, he doesn't know how funny he is. You could just feed him lines and he'd say them just verbatim, and then he wouldn't bother. And still to this day, me and Nick are still mates. He came to me show at the Ace Theatre a couple of months ago, and it's sad for me that show's over, but I'm more sad that the show's over for Nick.
Yeah, when you're
almost teared up. Then I'm sorry, I almost yeah.
No, please be open and emotional, man. I can imagine, when you're first on the call sheet creating something, you're also responsible for providing jobs and a living for people, and also you're creating, a lifestyle for people as well, because a community, you're bringing people together.
So I felt that on the Jim Jefferies show. Sometimes you'd get, a writer that was angry for one joke you told, or you'd get people who thought not enough of their jokes got on, or crewmen. And it's like, I was stressed out a lot. I think people thought that when the show's called the Jim Jefferies Show, that like you're the boss, but I was hyper conscious that my performance, how good my performance is, kept everyone employed. You know what I mean? I was fighting for everyone's jobs all the time, so I was well aware of that the whole time.
Awesome. Well, Jim, it was really great talking to you. I very appreciate all the time that you gave, and how willing to participate you were, and how open you were. So I'm going to let you go back to changing diapers and being with your family. And I look forward to seeing you at the end of the month here in Boston.
Appreciate it, mate. I appreciate it.
the time.